We'll do a review of Likutei Sichas in Chelek Tezvav, the second sicha for the Parshas Vayera. So this sicha, the Rebbe brings down a very difficult saying of the Zohar. The Zohar refers to the pit discussed as the pit of Yitzchak, when in reality it seems that the pit was Avram's pit. The pasuk in Perik, there was the discussion between Avimelech and Avram. So it says, Avram they formed a covenant between Avram and Avimelech. And then it says, he placed the 7 sheep. Why did you say, what is this, these 7 sheep that you have stationed by themselves? So and he said, take 7 sheep, so this will be testimony that I dug this pit. So this, the Zohar says, is one of 3 testimonies. The pit, the 7 kvoses, and then the goyrel, the way they distribute Eretz Yisrael, the abonim of Yeshua and the Yardin, that the pasuk says they're going to be a testimony. 3 edus, the Zohar says. And one of them, he calls the Be'er of Yitzchak. Well, this is talking about the Be'er of Yaakov, not the Be'er of Yitzchak. And the Rebbe is going to bring out the answer of the Ramaz, which says that although it was the Be'er of Yitzchak, of Avraham, but yet later on it was closed, and therefore we call it Yitzchak's Be'er. And the Rebbe's father, on the notes on the Zohar, he brings down that it's actually mainly Yitzchak, and the Rebbe is going to have the whole discussion about this to explain all these inyonim, what the Be'er is, previous inyonim, and the way both of these interpretations. Let's look inside. It states in the Zohar, Ploso inun de kaimi b'sahaduso lasodo. There are 3 that were placed in the testimony to testify. We're just quoting Lashon of Zohar here, even though we're only going to discuss one aspect of it, not the whole statement of the Zohar. The Zohar just says that there are 3 that are standing as testimony to testify. Ve'elen inun, these are they. Be'er di Yitzchak, says the well of Yitzchak, and we'll see in a minute that that's the Be'er that we were just discussing in Parshas Vayera. And Goyrel, that's the Goyrel. There was also a testimony for the Chalukas Haaretz. Va'avno d'Shabbat Yeshua, and the stones that Yeshua placed in the Yarden as a testimony. Chulu. There are 3 that are standing as witnesses to testify. Und those Zainen, they are the Be'er from Yitzchak, the well of Yitzchak, the Goyrel und Even from Yeshua. Now, which Be'er the Yitzchak are we talking about? So he quotes this pasuk over here, which says the Manti Leida, Be'er the Yitzchak and on Dixi Parsha Seinu, because this is which is written in our Parsha. It says Bavur Tia Leida. This is talking about before Yitzchak was Bechal born. This is talking about in the story with Abimelech and Avram, and they fighted this. So it's Bavur Tia Leida. So how is he? So we see that the Be'er is an Eida. That's the Be'er di Yitzchak. So is this verstandig? So it's not understood. Der Pasuk Bavur Tia Leida redoch wegen dem Be'er was Avram gekrochen. The verse that it says Bavur Tia Leida that the Zohar quotes talks about the Be'er that Avram dug. Is viruftas under Zohar Be'er di Yitzchak? So how does the Zohar refer to it as Be'er di Yitzchak? It's Be'er di Avram, not Be'er di Yitzchak. For the subject matter, it wouldn't make a difference. We're just saying there were 3 testimonies. This is a testimony. But when we say that this Be'er that was a testimony, we're calling it Be'er di Yitzchak. Why Be'er di Yitzchak, not Be'er di Avram? The Ramaz, the Ramaz answers this question, this surprise, and says like this: who says this? Avram Omri. It was said by Avram. The Be'er, if Staka said by Avram, but whose pit was it? It was Yitzchak's pit. The Be'er, the well, not the pit, the Be'er, the well. Whose well was it? It was really Yitzchak's well. It wasn't Avram's well, it was Yitzchak's well. Why are we saying that? That it's Yitzchak's well. But those Gufa put that beer. But that itself requires explanation. This is a pit, a well that Avram built, dug. Why is this called Yitzchak's well? He says the Be'er Shchavarot does Gufa that beer. How could we say about the well that was dug by Avram as that is Be'er di Yitzchak, that this is the well of Yitzchak? So that's the Rebbe's question in the Ramaz. The Rebbe is going to bring down an answer from his father, from Lekutei Levi Yitzchak, from his notes on the Zoyar, who gives the opposite explanation, base. Der Tate in seine Ha'oris of Gilliam von Zoyar, my father, in his notes on the margins of the Zoyar, that's all the books that he had. He had a Zoyar, he had a few books, and he wrote all of his notes, and then later on they were smuggled out of there by the Rebbe Tzachana. So, by his wife who was with him, who made him the ink, and he wrote on the Gillian, on the margins of the pages from the Zohar Shreibt, bringing them inyan. He writes about this idea. It's like this. Yichas habeir li Yitzchak. He references and he says that the be'er was Yitzchak. Im shekosuv zeh b'Avram. Although the pasuk is written by Avram. Mipnei shebe'er d'Avram sot muplishtim. Because the be'er of Avram, at the end, they were stuffed. They were closed up by the plishtim. After his passing. After Avram passed, after his death, they closed it. They stuffed it up. The Yitzchak chaforim mechodesh, and Yitzchak redug it anew. As the pasuk says later on, until the Tzchav Yitches, Vayoshav Yitzchak, Vayachper Chulu, that Yitzchak returned. He redug the pits, Vayikrolam Shemes, Kashemes, and he referred them and called them the names, just like the names Asher Korah Lahen Aviv that his father was called. So basically, Avram's Be'er didn't last. And we're saying, so this will be a witness. It's not Avram's well didn't last. It was Yitzchak, so therefore it's called Be'er Yitzchak. And the Rebbe's father adds, look over there in the Reish Parshas Todas, and Lochein Yichasoi Yitzchak. And that's why he references and he says he subscribes this Be'er to Yitzchak and not to Avram. So the Rebbe says there seems to be a contradiction. According to the Rebbe's father, it's Yitzchak's bird because Avram's bird didn't last. According to the Ramaz, it's really Avram's Be'er. But he says he dug. It's really Avram's Be'er, but it was a Be'er for Yitzchak, but it's not Yitzchak's Be'er. The Pirush from Tatan is L'cher L'Hepech from Pirush Ramaz. Seems like my father's explanation, says the Rebbe, is seemingly opposite of the interpretation of the Ramaz. Loit and Pirush Ramaz, according to the Pirush of the Ramaz, as the Be'er Shechofar Avram, who Be'er the Yitzchak, that the Be'er that was dug by Avram is the Be'er of Yitzchak. Meindos, so it means, as Veikir is as Yitzchak's Be'er. Avram dug Yitzchak's Be'er. Und noch die Chafiris HaBe'er, und noch die Chafiris HaBe'er ist gewinnt durch Avram. He basically, what he said is that it was done. The act of digging was done, but whose bear was it? It was Yitzchak's bear. Like the Pirish von Taten kommt es verkehrt, but according to the interpretation of the Rebbe's father, it comes on the opposite. As be'etzem is his bear, Avram, because he dug it. But what happened is, since he dug it again, the father is the posuk miyachas the bear Yitzchak, and that's what we call it to Yitzchak. So the Ramaz says that it's Yitzchak's bear, and just Avram did the digging. The Rebbe's father explains that it's really Avram's bear, but because they closed it, so therefore it became Yitzchak. But whose bear was it originally? Ramaz says Yitzchak, and the Rebbe's father says it was Avram's. This is moving on Pashut, but the Rebbe wants to explain both of these ideas, both of his father and the Ramaz in the inner meaning. And the Rebbe also wants to explain why the Rebbe's father chose to explain it differently than the Ramaz. This is moving on Pashut, it's understood and it's obvious as loydem teuchen from primus enyoni from chafiras beiros, that when we talk about the contents and the inner meaning, when we talk about digging pits, both of these commentaries have room, they have explanation. So we need to understand what is really the difference between these two interpretations. So their tate, why did my father understood instead of just explaining the interpretation of the Ramaz, and the Ramaz is pretty popular in Chassidus. He is many times quoted. He's brought down in the books of Chassidus. So how come the Rebbe's father chose to choose in a different way and opposite? And the Rebbe is going to say that's why it is because of the reference he makes to the Torah. We can say is that that the reason for choosing this and saying this interpretation is merumas in the Mtzion, that is hinted in the reference. But the Tate Gitzu B'Sei Perushay, that my father, that the Rebbe's father adds at the end of the commentary, take a look in the Torah in the beginning of Torahs, and over there, once we look in the Torah, as the Rebbe will explain, we'll see why it was necessary to explain like the Rebbe's father did. But yet the Rebbe is going to explain that Ramaz Pirush is also explained, as the Rebbe will explain later on. Gimel. In Torah dort is Mavur, the Torah over there is explained as the Inyan and the Avodah von Avraham is in Kavach Chesed. That the concept and the service that Avraham did was in the line of kindness. His thing was kindness. Kindness is Hamshocha Milmayl Lamata. That's to bring from above to below. You try to giving. Chesed, this kindness is giving, meaning you give from higher to lower. Service of Hashem, meaning bringing down godliness lower to us. Basically, trying to bring down the higher levels into the lower levels. What is the idea? The concept and the service which Yitzchak served was mainly in the line of strength, bringing things up. To bring things up from below to above. So Abraham is known as Chesed, Isha Chesed, Abraham Oyavi. Love is social Chesed, and Gevura Pachad, that's Yitzchak. And the Fargi Fitman, as by Abraham state, Abraham Oyavi, one who loves me. Love is associated with Chesed. And by Yitzchak state Pachad Yitzchak, because and the fear of Yitzchak, because Gevura is associated with Yira. Love comes from the measure of Chesed. Giving brings out the level of love. Pachat, fear, Yira, that comes from the measure of stringency, strength. And based on this difference between the service of Avraham was mainly in Chesed, bringing down Hashpah, kindness, the level of Chesed, the level of Yitzchak, the level of Gevura, Allah, to bringing out the lower levels to the higher levels, and bringing out the level of awe, the level of fear, the level of Gevura. So based on this difference, Al Rebbe war dort in Tera'ir. So Al Rebbe explains with the Tera'ir that Tam, the reason was the Be'edes of Avram am gegroben, seine verstoppt geworden durch die Plishtim. Why is it that the wells that were dug by Avram were later on stuffed through the Plishtim? Explains it in the spiritual idea. So first they were stuffed. Eventually, und Davke, nachdem Yitzchak had the Be'edes gegroben, after Yitzchak redug those same pits, from the Snayanu, now they were sustained. Now they can last. El explains like this. That particular Klippas Plishtim, which was the Klippa we were dealing with, those were the Plishtim that were fighting Abraham Yitzchak with the Beidus. That particular Klippa, of course, in Avedis Hashem, as the Rebbe will explain it, that opposes Chesed. Because I'm not zum Kava Chesed from Kedusha. Plishtim goes against Chesed of Kedusha. Only zum Kava Gvura, but doesn't go against the level of Gvura. The Rebbe will explain now in Dalet that Chesed is Pashtus, level of giving. That's like Plishtim, Movam foolish. That's an open place where, therefore, once a person has this feeling of himself and very happy and love and Chesed, you can come eventually after you finish davening, after you finish your avodah, you're open. Then you open yourself up to klippas. So therefore, the klippas can sort of take hold of you. But when you're strong gevuras, you keep the lid. You don't allow. And when when gevura works with chesed, then it's sustained, as we see. The bir von Inyan, the explanation of this idea is Plishtim is from Novus Shun Moviam foolish. Plishtim comes from the language an open street, meaning it's open, wide. It represents accessibility. It's a road which is open on both sides, so access is easy. This is what Razal Zogan. This is why our sages of blessed memory say, "Plishtim leit sonim hoyu." They were mockers. They were fun makers. They were litzonim. They were vile. Where does this mocking and this fun making? Where does it come from? It comes from an open heart, totally open. That's like Mefulish. He's open, and it's through access all side, laughing, fun. That's Plishtim. Unayoy says the Inyan for Chafiris Abeirus from Avram. What is Avram's service of digging the wells? Is the avodah from his rachvos mitzad chesed the kedusha. That is the widening of chesed the kedusha, bringing down a lot of chesed the kedusha. The tenua from ava, that's a movement of love. Tainuk, delight, simcha belakus, and joy in godliness. All expressions of wideness. Chesed of kedusha brings love, joy, pleasure. It comes with more force, more than the measure. That's chesed, a lot of chesed. That's why eventually this can come to a level that the plishtim closed down. That instead of the chesed, the kedusha, it becomes closed by the plishtim. Because this widening, even though it's kedusha, but it gives space, it allows for a nurturing from the plishtim, from the klipa. The israchvus for the umazevus is menaget to the kedusha, the widening of the other side which opposes kedusha. Now, it doesn't take place at the time of the kedusha; it takes place after it died the avoid of Avram, the avoid of chesed, the avoid of israchvus, the avoid of simcha. Then it can come to the plishtim closing it up, as the Rebbe explains down the brackets. That the unique nisnagdus for the chitzonim, this nurturing and the opposition of the outers is nechayach beis the midah von Avram is made begil nefesh ma'odam. That is not relevant. It doesn't apply at the time when the measure of Avram shines openly in the soul of man. Das heißt, which means, so we'll talk about the avodah of Avram in the soul of man. That side when the Eir Eliki is made begilu in the Abba V'Einig at the time that the godly light shines openly in the love and the delight, then can be no clip at that particular time. But only specifically, only after the light and the delight of the godly light becomes hidden, then it's possible as the that movement of widening and opening of the heart, so to bring it so the klippe should bring to a level of just fun making, merry making, and going wild in a simcha, in a joy of klippe. This is mudgish in pasuk, and this is emphasized in the verse. By satmum plishtim acherim Avram. It says they closed it after Avram died. As dov adav kenochdem is hotzich von him obgeton the avodah kedusha. That only after the love of kedusha has been removed, because he's done, he dies down from that level. Mois Avram, death of Avram, who sees by Giblibu, nor did know from sicha alev. And the only thing that was remained was that movement of the open heart. Nor dan is done, or so then there is room for the snagdus and plishtim, for the opposition of the plishtim. By satmon plishtim, the plishtim close it down. So this is Avram's digging of the Vayera, which represents the level of chesed, and therefore it can be trouble over there afterwards because plishtim can have a yinika. Over the Vayera for Yitzchak explains, this is based on the explanation of the Torah that I was explaining. The Vayera for Yitzchak haben the plishtim nit verschotten. They did not cover it up. They did not throw the sand back into it. As chafiras Vayera for Yitzchak is the avodah for Yiro Pachad Kedusha, since the digging of the wells of Yitzchak is the service of fear and awe of Kedusha, the Farom the Plishtim, that's why the Plishtim was Zainen der Zelu Mazef Chesed Kedusha. They oppose Chesed Kedusha, Nitki can't Soisim Zain, they could not cover it, the Vayera for Yitzchak, was in Yonim is Gvura de Kedusha, those wells which are Gvura of Kedusha. They could not do that they couldn't do. While ein b'choles kol midish b'luma zelis menaget, rak l'midish connected with Kedusha. The measure of the other side can only oppose the midah that is opposite in the Kedusha. So you can't have chesed of klippa, which is plishtim, oppose Gvura. They can oppose chesed, but not oppose Yitzchak. Ois hey, nit nor haben die Plishtim nit gekent Soisim sein the Vayera shel Yitzchak. Not only were they not able to close the wells of Yitzchak, nor noch mehr, but even more. They couldn't close him, but once Yitzchak redug, they couldn't even touch Avram's. The Vayera from Avram, even the wells of Avram. Hagam zeirin in the Chesed, even though their aspect is Chesed, haben sie nicht gekannt verstoppen. They could not stuff it. After Yitzchak has uncovered them, dug them up. That's brought in the minyan is, what's the explanation of this matter? The tchuna from Midas Ava is verbunden mit Hergesh HaMetzias. The characteristic of the measure of love is tied with feeling yourself as an entity. Yesh mi shoyev. An entity is somebody that loves. I love, the entity loves. You are something, there's a somebody there. But Yira, on the other hand, is Kabbalah soil, is B'chinas Bittel. That's a level of Bittel. That's a Bittel HaMetzias. Yesh Misha Yira, but is Kabbalah soil. B'chinas Bittel, subjugation HaMetzias, negation of your existence. On the river. And therefore, when the Avodah Fun Ha'idin is nor mit Avon Simcha Lein, when a Jew serves Hashem only with love and joy, the Baal der state in not to move from Yeshua, since he is in a mode of self-existence. Hagama dos is Yeshua's the Kedusha, even though it's an existence of Kedusha, it's a good, a yesh is loving Hashem, for example, kumen, then he can lead from this, it can come to pasha yeshus, to very simple self, feeling of self. And from this starts off as widening of kedusha. In which he is standing during the time of davening, so the Nocharov fall in the Israch with the Klippa, then he falls into the widening of Klippa, which will be mocking and fun making and joking. But when the service is added, in addition, it also has fear and accepting the yoke, the nuah from bitlun hepech, so that movement of subjugation, negation, and opposite of self feeling, the lost need that does not allow their bittul. So this bittul doesn't allow us the chitzonim zalhov mayinika, that the outers they should be able to nurture and get you down. Even though you have this widening of love and joy, they won't be able to nurture from it because you are protected, because you also have that bittul and ava, that lacking of self. When the Remitis move on, was the Vayera was Avram. There's no why they stuffed it up. But after Yitzchak dug him up, they didn't close it, they didn't stuff him anymore. But when in the Vayera from Avram, because when in the wells of Abraham, simcha, which is the service of love, and simcha is faran oich de chafir for Yitzchak, and there's also the thing of Yitzchak and the tenuah from bittul yirav kabbalah soil, that movement from subjugation, from awe, accepting of the yoke, is shonitzayches chitzonim and the chitzonim zalham mayinika. So it doesn't apply that the chitzonim should have a nurturing for they on their far. Is their flow has not ceased since it's still, it kept on going because it's protected now by Yitzchak's level of bittul and awe. So leit dem biur hanal is move on. So based on this above explanation, it's understood as the Vayera was Avram had gegrom, that those wells that were dug by Avram, Hagam as the Plishtim of Mazei Farshotim, even though that they have been stuffed by the Plishtim. Yitzchak is gegrom from the Snai, and Yitzchak redug him anew from deswegen, and yet seine ze euch noch der Beiker Avram's Vayera. They are mainly Avram's wells. The avodah von Abba v'simcha. There's the service of love and joy. Und die Peula von Yitzchak, and what is Yitzchak's impact? Yirav kabbalah soil, fear and accepting the yoke, is gedei zu verhitten dem kiyum for the Abba v'simcha. That's in order to protect and to sustain the level of love and simcha. So it's Avram and protected by Yitzchak. And the Riber is the Tate Mefarish, and that's why my father, the Rebbe's father, the Yitzchak explains that the Kavanah from Zohar in Loshen, Be'er Yitzchak, what does the Zohar mean when it says the well of Yitzchak is not as the Etze Be'er is Yitzchak. It's not that the Be'er itself is Giloitim Pirush Ramaz, as it is according to the interpretation of the Ramaz. Nor Ados is the Be'er Avram. This is the well of Avram. Nor was Yichas in the Yitzchak, he references it, he associates it, it's claimed as Yitzchak. Yois as the key for Avram's Aveda is durch the Aveda of Yitzchak, because how is it sustained is through the Aveda of Yitzchak, but it's still Avram's Be'er sustained by Yitzchak. And now the Rebbe is also going to explain how the Ramaz works according to this interpretation of Chassidus. The Asborim Pirush Anal from Ramaz Leiteres HaChassidus. So this explanation above, according the Chassidus, the Inyan from Chafiras, who says that it is Yitzchak's Be'er mainly. The Inyan from Chafiras Be'er is Bechlolus, the general idea of digging wells in a general way is the Avodah and Eifel Mat L'mayla. It's a service from below to above. We're talking about Avram's digging and Yitzchak's digging, but in a general way, it's all Memat L'mayla. It's the well coming from below to above. That comes from the line and the side of strengths of Yitzchak. As it's explained in many areas. The Faris, the Ramaz Mefarish, that's what the Ramaz explains as the Be'er Geher Bikr Yitzchak, that it mainly is Yitzchak, Be'er the Yitzchak Kava Gvura, because that is what the wells are. But it was also the novelty of Avram, the Kava Chesed, which therefore he is the one that ended up digging it, and he's the one that said it over here. That the Be'er Eida. Yashla Haisif. We can add in Zoyer Dort, that's doch nit wegen der Be'er Gufa. Here, we're not talking about the Be'er as such, nor wegen the Be'er as Eidus. We're talking that the Be'er is going to be a testimony. The Far Rufter im on Be'er the Yitzchak, and that's why it's called Be'er the Yitzchak. The Bald as the Zach von Eidus, because what is testimony? Is to öftem them kiyum from them inyan was they seinen made to establish, to make up, to sustain the idea, whatever they're testifying, say that this is it. Those edus from the edim, and when you have testimony from witnesses, is mevatel that takes away, negates the urim, all the complaints of their zach, and they testify. The inyan hakim and be'er. And mainly, since we're talking about aid, that was done through Yitzchak because they were stuffed. So therefore, as this, we call it better the Yitzchak as far as testimony in the defense of the Ramaz. Because the how we explain this in service of man. The service of a Yid needs to be with awe and with negation, self-negation. But because there is the great advantage of simcha, that's why there needs to be, even in the subjugation, needs to be simcha. The simcha the simcha needs to be in the hidden way. For them, was is mevoid in Torah Eirish, Parshas Toldos. The fact that in Torah Eirish, but there is explains. As dur der chafira the Yitzchak lenifsekoid nevi also, that when Yitzchak digs, so then the flow never stops; it keeps on going. From the Vayera of Avram Chevig, those are Vayera that Avram dug, is muchach. So that's evident as the oiftu from Yitzchak kava gvura in them. So what is the accomplishment? What is Yitzchak accomplished? Kava gvura is in the fact was durch ihm is given der kiyum from the Vayera the Avram. That he sustained the Avedas Avram. That's the waiting, the Avodah the Simcha. That's the work of Avodah of Simcha. So the it's not the year that has to bring in the Kava Simcha that you need. You have mainly year in the Kava Simcha, but the Torah explains that it's the mainly is the Avodah of Avram, and the only thing is it's for Yitzchak to keep on sustaining it, to sustain the Avodah of Abba Simcha. That's meant as the Avodah is in Kava Abba Simcha. So that's like the Rebbe's father explains that the Avodah is Kava Simcha. As the Zohar says, there's no greater service, so there's no service as the service of love. In order simcha should be sustained, you have to introduce first the Yida and the Kabbalah Machshmayim accepting the yoke of the heavenly kingdom in order for your simcha to be sustained. And that's why, according to the Rebbe's father and according to the Torah, the main thing is Avram. But we need Avram to be sustained, so we need Yitzchak. According to Ramaz, it seems like the main thing is the Yira, and it's just Avram adding to it. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parsha Vayelach Tavshin Lamed Hey.